Bitcoin just closed its fifth green weekly candle in a row. Momentum is building and the macro picture is heating up fast. Rumors are flying about a potential Trump and China trade deal, and if that comes together, it could flip the entire global outlook on its head. In today's video, we're going to be diving into the latest ETF products with the inflows and outflows, checking the fear and greed index, and pulling up the altcoin season indicator to see if the next leg up is already taking place. My name is Paul Sampson, and this is DataDash. If you're tired of being late to the big moves, this is your wake-up call. Welcome to the DataDash Traders Club, my exclusive private community built for investors and traders who want to stay ahead of the market, not chase it. I've been investing in crypto for nearly a decade and running this community for almost 5 years. And during that time, I've shared almost every major market move before it happened in real time. A few of note were the altcoin rally that kicked off in Q4 of 2023, noted the $74,000 Bitcoin top in March of 2024, just before altcoins dropped 50 to 80%. I noted the bullish reversal in September of last year that led to new highs, breaking us up past $100,000 for Bitcoin. Pointed out the bearish reversal harmonic pattern that we were pretty much putting in at the all-time high in January of this year, where Bitcoin was $110,000. And I stated in the community that if there was ever a time to take profits across the board, it was when Bitcoin hits $110,000. And of course, I identified the reversal at $77,000 just a month ago before the latest rally to up over 105,000. Now that's just the Bitcoin moves, of course, but inside the community, I break down everything from short-term day trades to macro investment strategies, covering both crypto and the traditional markets, with a heavy focus on the altcoins, where I present dozens of actionable setups, once again, ranging from short-term timeframes to more so mid to long-term plays, where anybody and everybody can easily review these setups and utilize the information, even if life keeps you pretty busy and you can't check the charts all day, every day. It's where I presented the setup on Ethereum that led to an over 85% rally so far, and also the bullish reversal on Tau, which just came into an exact target I gave of over 170% in the last few weeks. And this information was presented well before they happened. The community is designed for investors of all kinds, whether you're grinding daily or just want clean, reliable setups that you can trust. If you're serious about staying ahead of the curve and want real-time, real-edge analysis, click the link down in the description below and join us today. All right, folks, news of the day is that the United States announces a trade deal with China. And that they've come to some sort of agreement. Now, I personally have not verified if this information is accurate or not. Hopefully, we'll get some more information as the day progresses here. But this is what's kind of being tossed around. Really haven't found anything that's been solid so far. But the day is young. Another source here just says that Trump officials say the trade deal was reached with China, but the details remain unclear. So to me, that tells me a few things here, right? So I did just want to point out that Bitcoin did just have its fifth green weekly candle in a row with some sizable upside here, really not seen since basically the breakout from 60,000 up to 100 that we saw at the end of the year last year. But one thing I wanted to point out is that aside from us actually having these tariff woes seem to be almost over with, hopefully, we did have a little bit of a deal last week that sparked a little more bullish sentiment and momentum in the market. It appeared, at least, right, where UK and America basically came to an agreement with some of the tariffs over there as well. Now that occurred on Wednesday, and basically throughout the entire week, we really had nothing but upside over that whole week. And the speculation is that if America and China do reach a deal, that if we saw such an incredible move last week off of the UK deal, this is going to be a bigger ordeal in the market where investors will feel a little bit more attracted to putting risk back into the market, right? Thinking that that's all behind us now, the markets can continue. And personally, while I do think and believe that the markets will continue higher overall, I think that where we are currently, we could see actually a potential pullback, and a pretty sizable one that could last just a few weeks, right? So this is how I'm viewing Bitcoin kind of for the midterm here, just looking at a potential pullback, maybe back down towards about $90,000 potentially. But overall, I do anticipate this market to continue higher throughout the next few months here. So a few things that make me lean this way. And one of them is just sheer sentiment. Of course, we can always utilize the news and the world events to basically mold it into the analysis as well. Certain things obviously pop up when you're not expecting it, such as basically everything wrapped around these tariffs. It seems you just get a news catalyst almost every other week. But I wanted to point out something here, just with that being said, right? So we had this price action throughout the last few months here, which at the end of the day, were really just range bound. If you've lived out this last few weeks paying close attention, you would have really experienced quite the roller coaster of emotions. And at the highs here, this was $110,000 Bitcoin. The news was extremely bullish. I tend to say that the positive news was at extremes at this point, right? So many were not prepared and almost blindsided for this drop right here that wasn't that steep for Bitcoin, but it was fairly steep for, well, it really was steep for Bitcoin. I mean, when you're looking at $1 trillion asset, this is over a 30% drop. That's not a great time when you're holding that. Of course, the stock market as well had some pretty deep pullbacks at that same time. So the fear and the uncertainty starts to creep in. Throughout that whole window, it was tariff news, tariff news, tariff news, tariff news, tariff news, right? It got really aggressive. And then at the lows, we were at extremes once again on the news, right? So we had tariff news across this region, and was felt like, oh, the market's just pulling back because of that. And then once you get to that bottom, it's at extremes where everybody's like, it's going down from here, recession, depression, all those things, right? And I'm pointing out on Bitcoin, obviously the same emotions were had with the stock market as well, just 1 month ago. And while things start to kind of look a little bit clearer and we get a little bit more relief in the market, things will of course start to naturally become a little bit more bullish. There's news catalysts that will help with the direction, but I just do want to point out that we're back at the high side of the range. And depending on how this news around China does kind of unfold, I think that that's something that very much could and will lead to the markets overall continuing higher. But I think that in the moment, many tend to rush back into the market or rush into new things thinking that they're about to miss a huge rally. And while, of course, I don't know that the market won't just blow through this region, at the moment, it seems more likely that at least we probably just kind of range back down just a little bit, nothing crazy. I will say that this overall reversal and the way we've reacted at this region does lead me to believe that we've resolved this range, meaning that when we do finally break out of this region, it will be to the upside. Could it be from here? Absolutely could. There's things that at the moment just give me a little bit more credence to believe we get a little bit of a pullback here, maybe back down towards like maybe along the lines of this 382 to 0.5 Fibonacci retracement. There's also the quarterly pivot down here, year open. So there's a lot of support back down in those areas if we get it. And at the end of the day, this would be a really healthy correction to continue to the upside, right? So at this level here, we'd be looking for that low. We've got a new high. Potentially we come down and make a higher low, right? And that's just putting in bullish structure here to create our new uptrend from this region. I do foresee overall that we do break up to the upside. I think short term we have a likeliness to come back and revisit this region, right? So if you've been on the fence or worried that you're about to miss out on things, I think that we have another pullback coming along with. There's always another pullback, right? It's never just an up only scenario. So I'm just going back to the whole current news situation. Once again, not saying that news is not important or you should ignore it completely or anything of those along those lines. I just do think that in the short term, sometimes when we get to some of the extremes in the news, it's can be a little bit of a almost a trap, I guess, right? So, and it's just it's once again, we're talking the entry is key. We covered that really heavily on Friday's video, and really just we'll always hammer on that. Of course, you want to be able to get in at ideal areas. You never want to chase a huge green candle. There's always going to be another opportunity. And even if we see a pullback here locally, and even if it's right as we get some really great news and it appears to be a little bit of a fake, and I do think that China and America coming to agree on these tariffs will be a overall big news catalyst that when we look back 6-7 months from now, it'll be like, oh, okay, we had some tariff issues back in the beginning of the year. We came to agreements here. We obviously had, the new administration is super bullish on crypto, like all those things for the long term will come into play. I think it's just the short term. Just don't be too surprised, as always, to see 10, 15, 20% pullbacks. It's just part of the game. All right. And with that being said, overall for Bitcoin, I think that if we do one of two things, we either break out of this range right now, which I lean a little less on that idea. More so, I do foresee us coming back into this region here, kind of more back into the mid range, maybe that 90, 93,000. And then we move on from there. And that next two major areas on Bitcoin, one is pretty much just above the highs. So it's just something of note here is at 111 to 113. And then the next major one I'm looking at is going to be 135,000. So a macro idea at the moment is potentially we break out here, but more than likely we get a little bit of a pullback, cool down, and then we project higher maybe later this summer. Now, if we take a look at the Bitcoin ETFs, how they've been doing over the last few days here, really nothing to write home about, except for on Friday, we did have a little bit of a pretty decent pickup here with 321 inflows coming in for Bitcoin. Day before that was 117, 142 before that, 85 actually came out the day before. Really pretty neutral up until that Friday, honestly. Nothing too out of the ordinary, but we did have a pretty good bunch of inflows coming in here, meaning that institutions, clients, things like that, they're purchasing. So all good things at the moment. Still says that there's obviously some appetite from the institutions in the Bitcoin market, even at these prices. So pretty healthy here. And even if we do see a bit of a pullback, I foresee that the institutions would come up and probably be able to buy those discounts. So the fear and greed index, which is something that basically is measuring the sentiment of the market. It's an aggregate that picks up information all across all avenues here. And a few weeks ago, we took a look at this, and crypto was actually in a state of fear when Bitcoin was trading at like 85,000, 84,000, just a little bit before that last recent $20,000 pump. We're now sitting in the greed area, so just something to be aware of. It doesn't necessarily mean a huge dump has to occur right now, but it is likely that we get one sooner than later at this stage. And I don't mean dump. I'm talking, once again, correction, 10, 15%. It's a dump in the stock market. Crypto, that's a Tuesday for us. But yeah, so we're pushing back up into the greed category. Once again, this time of recording, we're seeing $105,000 Bitcoin, basically $2,500 Ethereum. Huge move on Ethereum last week. We'll take a look at that as well. And overall, yeah, so just in the greed state. Stock market, a little less in the greed area, a little bit higher than what it was the last time we looked. It was in neutral category. And if you recall, it was one of the biggest reasons why I was looking for a bigger move on the markets just a few weeks back, because while we were trading into some key regions, the market was relatively neutral. I stated that it was like a time where it seemed like everybody was asleep at the wheel, right? Or they're not paying attention. Maybe someone wanted to buy, pick up some more, either stocks, crypto, but they're waiting a bit because of all the uncertainty in the market, or maybe they were thinking that because the market was just kind of lower and it was kind of flat for a little bit, it would be a few weeks before anything would happen. They had time, they could wait till their next paycheck. And then you get these really quick moves. And then, of course, people who were sidelined is what it comes down to, or somebody who may even have sold the bottoms or sold lower at least, start to really feel the pinch in times like this. So as always, I'll state, just kind of keep a level head, remain neutral if you're invested, which most of you probably already are. Just note that we're at some really key regions here that we are likely to get a little bit of a cool down. Nothing's broken at that point. Still would overall imagine the market heads higher. That doesn't mean we have to have a pullback either. It's just this is that zone where I'm highly anticipating major resistance, at least I'll say in Bitcoin specifically. One other thing I wanted to kind of just add to our Rolodex here of things to be peeking at is on CoinMarketCap, they actually have a really interesting altcoin season indicator, which is a little bit of a lagging indicator, as every indicator is. Of course, it doesn't necessarily time things well ahead, but it does give you a good indication of when it's in the midst of, and you can kind of get a little bit of other confirmations aligned with it. And right now it's really leaning into a 34 out of 100 on the score of altcoin season. Last time we had a full-blown altcoin season. I almost hate the term altcoin season because I think it's affiliated with what we experienced, or at least some of us, back in 2017. And maybe you could consider a little in 2021, but truly nothing has, not nothing, but the altcoins have not reacted as a whole the way they did in 2017 since then, right? And many reasons why. A huge one is that there is so many of them now, and there's just like physically not enough liquidity to inject into these millions and millions and millions of projects. Back then we only had 2,000 coins, okay, and total, and that's including Bitcoin, including Ethereum, and it was just a lot less that could get a piece of the pie. Now there's just so many, so you have to be a little bit more choosy, a little picky. So I'd really like almost lean with saying altcoin just rallies, just like when you see a rally in the market, a rally in Bitcoin. The season indication is just when one is outperforming the other. So it's been Bitcoin season for quite some time because overall Bitcoin's outperformed many of the altcoins, not all of them, but many of them. And at some point, we'll get a shift for a bit where the altcoins will be outperforming Bitcoin at least. And that's just what's known as that altcoin season. So far, we're measuring in at 34 out of 100. So just a little indicator that I thought was a pretty fun one to just kind of pay attention to. And we'll maybe keep updating it as we go. Last full blown, like I said, was altcoin season back in December of last year. So just 6-7 months ago. And when we were pushing into 87 on the altcoin season scale. So of course, folks, while Bitcoin is very important to the overall market, it's the market driver at the end of the day for crypto. I know that many of you, including myself, are very interested in the altcoin market, right? So a few things lead into a pretty healthy altcoin rally, right? Few of those things are Bitcoin not crashing. So that's always a key. The dominance of Bitcoin pulling back. So that means that capital is rotating out of Bitcoin and into other areas of the market, i.e. the altcoins, Ethereum. Generally, when Ethereum pumps really hard, that really pulls down on the Bitcoin dominance a lot, as we actually just saw recently with the recent pump in ETH. But we're going to take a look at the Bitcoin dominance, because the more Bitcoin dominance comes down, if we have an indication of that coming down, we can anticipate more upside in the altcoins. And then also take a look at the total 2 market, which is the altcoin market, which I have a pretty interesting outlook. Really simple cup and handle that I think is got potential to break to the upside. And once again, these are high time frame. Don't expect it overnight. Don't feel like you need to rush in anything. There's no need to FOMO. We're going to have some time. Okay. So I've been tracking this potential bearish harmonic setup. This is what's known as the shark, probably my favorite setup at all ever. And it's known for a few things. It basically takes the lows, you come up and you take the highs. All right. So, and this is the same pattern this is what appeared at $110,000 Bitcoin at the all-time high. Same pattern at $74,000 last year. Same pattern at $30,000 a year before that. Like it's a really, really great setup. If you can, identify it. Very specific ratios as far as the sequence of Fibonacci's go. And on top of that, very specific targets when it starts to unfold. All right. So in this case, we completed up at the high. So this is a bearish setup, and we had targets coming down here. Now, the key target here is going to be the 0.5 Fibonacci. All this is simple, pulled from the low to the high there. And this is what kind of signifies whether or not we're going to get any more sizable downside. All right. So far, this has already come to target. Very well, we could get another reversal from this and just kind of head back up. The key area is 64.29% to see any closures above to start looking for more upside, meaning that if we come back up and start closing a daily candle here, I would start to say that this is probably our local low, and we would head back higher. And once again, this is a chart where if it goes higher, altcoins do not perform well, and we want this chart to go down for our altcoins to perform well. Vice versa, we start coming down below this region. There's no gold pocket support on this. It's just straight down to our 886. And then more times than not, we range around for a minute, and then you come down and you meet your final target, which is down at 59%. Now, overall, that seems like not that crazy of a move. That would be about 12% move. About a 10% move down to those areas. Just on this 4% move that we've already had, this is when we've seen the moves that we've gotten recently out of the altcoins. This is where Ethereum has just pumped 85%, right? And that 4% move, this is where we saw this huge 85% move on Ethereum, where it might not even be done quite yet. We've gotten this move out of Solana right into a key target of 90% rise. Gotten a complete range rotation here out of SUI of almost over 100%. And here's that Tau setup, right? Almost a 200% move now from the area I've identified in the trading community. And this is actually the same exact setup that I am just pointing out on the Bitcoin dominance, where the dominance version is bearish. This one is a bullish shark. All right. And we're coming up. You can see how we basically ran straight up to that 0.5, which was our first target. And we're starting to close now above that. Like I said, no gold pocket support. It's just going to be more than likely straight up towards this 886, which is a pretty decent move, right? Assuming we can keep closing above this region. So all that to say that we've seen all those incredible moves and many more across the market on just a 4% drop in the dominance here. We could see another 6-7% into these final targets over the next weeks, where we'll see the altcoins continue to rally. And then this can honestly turn into an area where we see a sizable drop overall in Bitcoin dominance, which could really kick off a monster rally in the altcoin market. Now, I also mentioned a super simple outlook here with this cup and handle formation on the total 2 market. Generally, I don't usually fall in love with these patterns as they have a really low win rate, I guess you could say, right? It's probably like 50-50 on things such as a cup and handle as far as when they actually truly do break. A lot of times these form, People get really excited about them. Everybody looks to it. And more times than not, they end up almost being like a fake out. But I will say that with Bitcoin rallying to the areas it's come to, with the dominance being so high at this point as well, and we have not yet had a true altcoin rally, aside from the few little bursts here and there, I think that there's potential for the altcoin market to really see a sizable move higher here for several months, right? This is not something I anticipate happening overnight. We get a few weeks and we're done. This would be a multi-year breakout, dating all the way back to 2021. And this is something that truly can lead to something really big. Obviously, we need some more confirmations at higher places, but that's why, for me personally, I'm looking for these great entries on things like Solana and Tau and Ethereum and everything else I present well in advance, right? Especially when the news is at those extremes and the fear is really high. Generally, those are the best opportunities when there's blood in the streets. Be greedy, right? This is just a really, really clean setup to me. We've had this huge rounded formation. We've had this basically the handle right into the gold pocket. So once again, just straight from the low to the high, gold pocket Fibonacci retracement, meaning this is retraced 65% of this overall move up. I'm looking for daily closes above basically $1.33 trillion. And mind you, this is the entire altcoin market minus Ethereum. So you're seeing this move right here, and it's not even including Ethereum in it, right? If we did, we probably would be well above this. But if we flip that $1.33 trillion mark on daily closing basis, I think that once again, I think that we are in for a sizable move to the upside for realistically probably a lot longer and higher than people think, right? So if, I think many are into the 4-year cycle mentality still. Personally, I've not subscribed to the 4-year cycle theory with crypto basically ever since 2021. And believe me when I say I was a huge 4-year cycle enthusiast. I loved being able to take fractals almost and look at it, year over year on Bitcoin and see the resemblance. But I do think truly that was broken back in 2021. And I think that we're forming basically our first 20-year cycle alongside the housing market that is all coming to an end in this next 18 to 36 months, in my opinion. With that being said, I think that we have some time here. Once again, going back to the idea of the FOMO and just don't feel like you need to rush in anything if we start to see some more upside here. But overall, I think that the markets are really shaping up here for another leg higher in the coming weeks and months here. So I think we're in for a pretty exciting remainder of this year for one, and then potentially even a little bit longer than that. So I'm excited to be here and, going through everything as it's happening, adjusting, of course, as it comes. By no means do I know what the market's going to do, but try to identify the best paths and the most probable outcomes to position myself at least and my community so that we can gain an edge in this market, right? So if you found any value today, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button so that you never miss one of our uploads. And once again, if you're looking for real-time insights and want to stay ahead of the next big move, don't forget to check out the DataDash Traders Club. It's where I share everything first, from short-term setups to macro investing plays across crypto and the traditional markets. So the link is down in the description below if you're interested in checking that out. Till the next time, everybody, stay sharp, and I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.